guys, welcome back to Eggs the Podcast. But before we get started, I want to talk to you about our sponsor, Taylor Style. We're deep into Q2 and things are in full swing. Everything is happening at once. Conference season is full steam ahead, people are traveling, calendars are packed, and business is definitely back in motion. This is the time of year when you're showing up more meetings, more dinners, more events, more being out in the world, and whether we like it or not, how we present ourselves starts to matter a little more too. That's why I love Taylor Style. It's a menswear rental and styling service that combines real human stylists with AI to send you clothes that actually make sense for your life. Not random pieces, not stuff that looks good on a model but doesn't fit the way you actually live. Clothes you can wear to a meeting, on a trip, out to dinner, or walking into a conference and feel like yourself, just a little more dialed in. So instead of scrambling to figure out what still fits, what still works, or whether you've been wearing the same 2 outfits for 6 straight weeks, Taylor gives you solid options that fit well, work together, and make it easy to look sharp without spending your time shopping for it. And best part, when you're done, you send it back. No laundry, no dry cleaning, no extra hassle. I'm a subscriber right now, and every few weeks I get a box with hand-picked outfits chosen by a real stylist, refined by their AI, and the crazy part is they actually nail it most of the time. Stuff I would never go buy, but I end up wearing nonstop just because it works. And honestly, that's the part I appreciate the most. It just makes life easier. You look put together, you save time, and you take one more recurring decision off your plate, which this time of year is not nothing. So go to taylor.style, that's TAELOR.style, and use promo code EGGS to get 25% off your first month. That's TAELOR.style, promo code EGGS for 25% off your first month. TAELOR. They handle the clothes so that you can focus on everything else. And now, back to the show. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Eggs the Podcast. Today's special guest is Kate Assaraf, the founder and CEO at Dip. How are you, Kate? Thanks so much for joining us.
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'm thrilled to death to have you. And I'm really excited about what you bring to the table here. You've got a really exciting business, which, by the way, I love your branding. Everything is awesome. I come from marketing, so I love that. And let's talk a little bit about your business and what you do and how we got here today.
Sure. Yeah. So my name is Kate Assaraf. I own Dip Sustainable Hair Care. And what it is plastic-free hair care and personal care for people that are kind of fed up and written off sustainability. And I think that there's a lot of people out there that have, invested in the plastic-free deodorants or the hair care or just all of the swaps and have felt very disenchanted with the movement because they found that the products weren't better substitutes than what they were already using. And so I found a lot of people were leaving sustainability and just returning back to their plastic clad items. And my goal with Dip was to make something so good that the plastic free part of it didn't even matter.
Yeah, I love that. Well, it's one of the things I'm constantly telling our kids, but it's like, be undeniable and then people can't say anything about it, right? So to your point,
Right.
The plastic freeness was great, but the fact that the product itself is actually significantly better, is undeniable in this case, is actually the difference maker. The plastic thing is great, but the other part is the actual differentiator. So it's amazing.
In fact, it's not never, but we rarely talk about being plastic free in our marketing because it's really not the big part of the story. Big part of the story is that this is really good. It's made with great ingredients and it'll last you a long time and save you money.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's great. So let's talk a little bit about, I guess, sort of your entrepreneurial beginning then. So, for a lot of people, maybe they have a family that inspired them to get into a business, or maybe, grandma and grandpa ran a hair care company and then you moved into this. Can you talk about your experience and what that was like?
Sure. So, I grew up in a family that was peppered with, I wouldn't say littered with, but peppered with entrepreneurs. And so my dad was an entrepreneur, my stepmother, my brother, my 2 brothers and my sister. Now that I'm thinking about it, my stepsister, I guess there are a lot of entrepreneurs in my family. So I'm the youngest in my family tree. So I had a lot of wisdom ahead of me and I saw a lot of the good, but also a ton of the bad with entrepreneurship. So it's something I didn't really want to step into lightly. In fact, I'm not sure I ever really wanted to be an entrepreneur at all. But, when you see, I'd been in the beauty industry for 20 years, when you see a problem you can solve and it becomes an unscratchable itch, as I've heard it described, that's exactly what it was for me. It was I know I can make this hair care great. I know that because I've been on a mission to reduce my plastic for now it's been almost 12 years, but the idea that I couldn't find something that was up to my standards really, really upset me, because I was creating more waste than it was doing the opposite of what I intended, which was like reducing waste. But instead I just had like all these shampoo and conditioner bars in my shower. And I was like, I know I can solve this. And it's like, I know I can do it better than what's out there. So here we go. It's time to roll up my sleeves and join all the other audacious people that start their own business.
Yeah. No, I love that. Well, and I think that's like kind of a core spot where like entrepreneurs are born, right? Is they discover something that bugs them, or a problem that they're trying to solve. And so, so I think that that's like a very pure way of getting into this business. I think it's also cool or interesting. And you sort of alluded to this at the beginning, or mentioned it at the beginning, which is you had initially sort of this notion about, trying to get rid of plastics or trying to be better in that regard, but how that's almost become irrelevant at this point. It's like it's a feature, but it's not the whole thing. And so I love that from just sort of a foundational perspective, which is trying to build a product. I think sometimes people get caught up, and this is where people will like try and cut corners to get profitable. Like, so they'll use a cheaper material, or they'll use whatever. And, it's kind of I don't know, it's like addition by subtraction or something, right? They try and figure out a way of making a product by doing less of something or whatever, so that they can increase their margins. And it sounds like for you in particular, the process might have actually been opposite, which is, or maybe, and I'll let you fill it in, but maybe it wasn't that big a problem to actually use better ingredients. Like, so it's like, why are we being cheap, and why are we using these terrible chemicals and things like this that, that you're seeing in hair care products and really all products? So maybe my naive brain is going, oh, well, it's a matter of cost, right? It's like, okay, we can get this thing cheaper if we buy this crappy chemical, and it's only a few molecules worse, it's fine.
Yeah.
And, but in your case, you actually went the other direction, where you started building better quality. And it seems like maybe, at least in the beginning, maybe profitability or like making a cheap or cost-effective product was less of a factor than building a good quality product.
Yeah. Well, so I've been in marketing for a long time, and what happens often in the trenches of marketing meetings, and your listeners probably already know this, someone brings a product to a place, to a manufacturer, and is like, make this at, whatever the fun price points are. Can you make this so I can sell it at $9.99, $19.99, $29.99? Like you build the product to the price point. I did not, obviously there's some flexibility in beauty, right? So I worked with a chemist who had been making salon hair care for 40 years. And so he has kind of like transcended like trends and all of these things in hair care. He knew it was like tried and true. He also knew it was new in the market. And I said with him, I was like, let's make the best bar ever, regardless of what the price is going to be. That's how I started. I didn't start with like build backwards and subtract all of the bells and whistles until we can meet this marketing price point. And I knew because it's a solid format, I knew I could grow the bars to make the value. Do you know what I mean? So, well, so the conditioner bar, for example, like most people in hair care and in luxury hair care want to sell like a tube of expensive conditioner every 3 to 5 weeks. They want someone on that like fast to consume system. And so for me, I was like, well, I'm sustainable. I want to buy less. What if I made the best conditioner bar out there and just grew it? So you only have to buy it once a year. So that was kind of how I managed putting really great ingredients into it. I made the value for the consumer, not for me. And I was banking on the consumer being so excited about it that they would tell others. And so that was how I did it. And it's for my love of someone trying to reduce plastic that I did it that way.
Yeah, no, it's so interesting because it seems so counterintuitive or different than the way that like, the big companies do. And, obviously I don't buy a lot of hair care products, so I can't totally speak to this, but I can tell you that, at least in my marketing or like, my wife, ever since having kids, her hair had been thinning and things like that. So she's tried everything under the moon to try and make something work. But it seems like most of these big companies anyway, it's kind of gimmicky. Like they come up with a new thing, or there's some new chemical or some new mineral out of Central Africa or something that is going to be the thing, right? This is the new thing. So the rest of it's still the crap that it always was, but now we're sprinkling a little of this whatever magic in it.
It's the base plus marketing ingredients. So most of the base is going to be the same across many different things. And the marketing ingredients, they come in, a new extract or a new like peptide or a new ingredient that just, especially in shampoo and conditioner, most things they rinse off. So like, it's not like a skincare where you're letting something sit on your skin for a long time and you get the benefits.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think it's such an interesting thing because, yeah, I mean, I can think of some different brands that my wife's been experimenting with. Like there was one that was like a hemp thing or something that was like,
Yeah.
so hemp was the big trend for a hot minute, and I don't know.
Right.
I mean, maybe it is good. I mean, I have no idea if it's good or bad in reality, but, but nonetheless, it was the big brand. It was the thing to try. It was whatever they were selling at one of these fancy salon stores, and so she went for it. And so, but what's interesting about your approach is, I mean, not only was price not a factor, but you did actually, I guess, through the, the scaling, like you were talking about, you're able to kind of make it cost effective.
Yeah.
And then, I think the other thing that people do, or that your approach is really unique for, but I think with women in particular, they're willing to spend money on this stuff, especially if it is good, and I think they would love to only have to buy it once a year and things like that. Yeah. So your perspective, I mean, again, it's kind of, okay, so you were sort of fighting the war against plastic, but what that says more broadly about you as a person is that you sort of care about society or people or things or the planet or whatever, right? But there's this care outside of yourself in this little corporate version. Yeah. And so I think if you extrapolate that out to something more broad in terms of the product you're building, all of a sudden it starts to sound like, okay, well, I actually did build this for you and this is good for you. And yeah, you only have to buy it once a year and maybe it costs a little more than what you were buying yesterday, but you're only buying it once a year. And, but like all this was for you. And I think that that's a very different perspective than you see in a lot of marketing and a lot of, even in healthcare or marketing or beauty. It's not a common thing, I don't think.
Well, thank you. And care for myself and care for others and my customers is not mutually exclusive. And I think if you build that kind of framework into your company, that is the sweet spot. Like I feel so fortunate that I really do love what I do. And I like spring out of bed to run my company. But I also, I'm so hyper aware of what it's like to be a consumer trying to do better for the earth, because so many people are trying to do better and, they buy into like these sustainable gimmicks and it like ends up really annoying them and turning them off. So I wanted someone to be like, to buy dip and feel like surprise and delight. They're like, oh my God, I can't believe this works. I can't believe my hair feels the same way it would feel coming out of a salon. Like those are very emotional things. Hair's like so emotional. You get a bad haircut, like it could ruin you for a solid amount of time. As I say, it's like my favorite TikToks to watch is when someone like tries to get their own bangs. Always cut more than you need, Yeah. But yeah, I feel for someone who's trying to do right by the earth. And I feel that there was a time when there was a lot of like private equity vultures kind of swooping in on this type of consumer, like the person who's like wants to buy plastic free items and selling them things that just were only plastic free, but not good.
Yeah, no, it's funny because I remember like, and it's not totally related, but I remember the hype around the Toyota Prius was that, you'll save the earth, you'll save gas money, you'll do all this stuff, all these things. And then later it came out that there was some test that they ran on it or something, some report. And it said basically that the amount of petrochemicals used to make a Prius is like 10x what you'll ever use to offset, so it's like, to your point about marketers trying to sell this to people who are trying to do good, it's, people are making decisions to try to do the right thing, but there's a little bit of this bait and switch thing where it's like, well, yeah, I mean, it's better than your, current car, but you're actually still doing all this damage. So it's like,
right.
And so having a product like that, that's, I guess, a little bit more true to the cause is good. But I think also, and just to transition a little bit, that sort of mindset or your approach to this too, I think is really indicative of how you've grown this business as well. So not only in trying to scale, one of the big things that you've been a little bit anti is trying to avoid the big box stores and these big online platforms and things, the Amazons of the world. And in part, not only take your sort of brand or your mission, to your consumers in a better way, but also sort of elevate the small business world and things like that, where these, smaller shops can start to carry your products. And what I think that does is I think exactly your goal, which is it builds brand affinity. It makes people actually love you versus, just any product. I mean, I might run out and buy 99-cent Suave, but it's not because I love them. It's because it's cheap and it smells like apples.
Yeah.
But, but it's probably terrible. So, but I don't have any affinity for those guys, is my point. And so, but in your case, people actually, like, I guess the money and the cost or whatever start to become second or third when you really love a brand and you love what it stands for. And so can you talk about, I guess, sort of the conscious decision to try and avoid these sort of, I guess, more commercial routes, the maybe more obvious decisions that the aforementioned PE vultures would have gone immediately, which is to Amazon and to the big box stores. Making that actually part of your process to not do that is I think for some people it would be considered risky, but I think it actually plays into exactly who your brand is.
Yeah, this is my favorite topic, by the way. It's like, I'm almost 5 years, I'm 4.5 years into owning Dip. In the very beginning, when I set out to support indie retailers, because I came from big box background and beauty background and, Sephora, Ulta, Target. This was like those were the goals back then, Amazon, right? Like by all my former colleagues, I was pretty much scoffed at and laughed at for my business approach. Like, you're like, are you sure you're never going to stay off Amazon? You're like, the second Ulta is willing to write a PO, you're going to run into it. And I don't think they understand, because the sustainable consumer, I am that. I have been refilling since I discovered refilling. And if anyone doesn't know what refilling is, there's refill stores all around the country. You go in with like your empty laundry jug and you refill laundry, or you refill your hand soap, or you, like for me, like the death of me is going to be these mangoes, these dried mango cheeks. Like I'm always refilling a big tub of those and I eat them at my desk, but I refill as much as I can. So I'm not constantly buying containers and constantly buying plastic and packaging. So because I've been part of that community since now it's been 7 years, I've been part of this refilling community. I knew that that's where sustainability actually happens. That's where the real conversations about sustainability happen. That's where people go to like these in-store events, and that's where you go for discovery. And I call it like refill is the new record store. So if you remember back in the day when you wanted to find something cool in music, you would go to the record store, you talk to the kind of like that counterculture person behind the counter and be like, I like this band. Like, what else do you have for me? Like, it's like that in sustainability now. And it's this grassroots movement. It's like punk rock economics to like go and refill. I think it's so cool. And so it sounds like I'm like anti-corporation and all these things. I'm not anti-corporation, but I know this moment I put Dip on Amazon, people will flock to Amazon to buy it and not to the refill stores where I know sustainability matters the most. And I don't know how to explain this with any more like enthusiasm. Like I love, like I know them now. I know these people personally, these refills. There's probably like 400 or 500 at any given time in the country all the time. I know these people. I interact with them. I know all about their stores. I've visited like refill stores in almost every state and met their customers in person. Like I love this movement and I will do whatever I can to get people in those doors. Yes, to buy Dip, but to buy Dip and have that like Target effect where like you go in for one thing and then you're like, oh, okay, I need this. And before you know it, you've made a bunch of swaps that you didn't know you needed. And for me, like there's so much digital pollution out there and so much, there's so many like bad actors trying to sell you sustainable goods. Whereas like if you go into a refill store, that person behind the counter, the owner has like vetted every version of every product. Like they've tried 50 shampoo bar brands before they bring in Dip. They've tried every version of like replacing saran wrap before they give you, stasher bags and like, whatever brand that they choose. So that was my whole goal. I've now been on a soapbox for too long. So
well, that's okay. I think it's actually literally your job to be on a soapbox. That's kind of the gig. No, but one thing that I think is really interesting about it, and this is like a dichotomy that I've been kind of exploring a lot. I mean, I have been writing on this topic for a long time, but it's this idea of this movement back to sort of these grassroots things, right? Yeah. And I think it's actually getting faster and faster. As much as everybody thinks the world's going to implode on AI, I think actually what's going to happen is people are going to resist AI and move back towards more like, I don't know, tangible things is how I describe
Absolutely.
it. And so, and you start to see some of this happening when like craft beer and,
Yeah.
beard oil and some of these things that are a little more relevant to my male audience. But, nonetheless, though, the point of those things is, I mean, all the way down to your phone. I mean, like now we're totally button free. And if you're pressing a button, it's like not even a button. It's a picture of a button, like you've even lost the tactile sensation of pressing a button on your phone. And, and I think that there's something in humans that, and I kind of distill it down to relationships, but I think it's relationships with yourself, with people, with things. Right. Yep. And I think that we like as humans to have some kind of physical relationship with something. And so in this case, whether it's whether it's a conditioner bar or it's, some product that was made by, somebody down the block or whatever, versus buying the commercial version, I think sometimes people just like that, even if it is. And I really like how you phrased it as being kind of a little punk rock economics here, but it is kind of that, right? There's also this like contrarian thing that people want to do. Totally. Where it's like, oh, well, yeah, you bought that one. Psh, I got this one and it's handmade by Joe over here, or whatever. Like this one's kind of cool because it's unique. It's different. It's not the one that's mainstream, and it's like, I always complain about Costco jeans, for example. They started selling Lucky brand jeans. And when I was a kid, I loved Lucky's. Like I was broke and I could never get them. And one day when I could afford Lucky jeans, finally, I started buying them. And then Costco started selling Lucky jeans. And I've never put on another pair of Lucky jeans. And, part of it was I bought a pair from Costco because they were cheap and I tried them and they weren't the same jean. It was something else that was made for Costco, but it was just Lucky branded. But for me, that did so much damage to the reputation or the exclusivity or the cool factor of having these Lucky jeans that it totally changed my perspective on those pants, right? And even if you can go into a high-end retailer or whatever and buy fancy Lucky jeans still, like I don't know if you can, but maybe you can.
It's lost the status.
I wouldn't now. Like I'm on the new brands, you know what I mean?
It's also lost that emotional piece. Like when I think buying something and parting with your own earned money and putting your money in the hands of a brand is emotional, right? Even if it's just fast, it's a fast transaction. It's an emotional thing, parting with your money, because once it becomes stuff, it's no longer money, right? And so, you buy something and you you're like, oh, these Lucky jeans have some sort of prestige to them. And then you go see them kind of like everywhere on everyone. And then it's like, oh, I actually don't think that this choice was the same choice I thought I was making.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong. I mean, like I spend plenty of money at Costco and there's plenty of things that I think Costco is good for, but there's like a slickness to that stuff when it kind of loses. It's like, and even if it's totally just my naivete, right? Lucky jeans is probably selling gazillions of pairs of jeans. I mean, they're not that exclusive really, right? But for some reason, when they hit a place like a Costco, there's a slickness that happens. Right. And so, and I think that is maybe what's being avoided here in your case, by your philosophy of avoiding these big box stores and stuff too. Not only are you, really appealing to your sustainability edge, but I think if you moved your product into Amazon, for example, like all of a sudden now you're competing on price or you're competing on whatever other factor, and it might be an easier delivery mechanism for some people, but in order for you to stand out on Amazon, like you're going to have to start making decisions that are maybe different. Like you're not going to be able to, your main audience may still buy it from Amazon. But but there's going to be like, if you're going to try and win net new business, now you're going to have to maybe make some concessions to try and, maybe you have to optimize. So you show up in search, or you have to, lower a price or let them use their smart pricing or, whatever. And so all of a sudden it just changes the whole dynamic. And maybe back to this notion of slickness. Well, now it's easily gettable. I don't have to work for this. There's no relationship. I just, I can click now and I'll have it tomorrow. And, it loses a little bit of that. If I have to go to the refill store, like I have skin in the game, right? I have to go do this. Like if I want my product, I have to go get it. And I think that that's actually kind of a good thing in some case.
I think so too. I think the friction is important because I think impulse shopping is not really healthy for people. And I want people to have a little bit of friction before they buy it, make sure they really want it. But outside of like the cool factor and all of that of just not being on Amazon, my independent stores, some of them that carry dip, some of them, I have one in particular that sold, about $200,000 worth of dip since she started carrying it. She could never do that if it was on Amazon. I have plenty of stores that sell between $50,000 and $75,000 in one store per year of dip. And that is something I'm very, very I'm very protective of, because these are people who have put like everything on the line to open a sustainable store. It seems almost like backwards in today's commerce world. And I think it's so cool that they do it. And I think that if more brands like took their stuff, I know everyone's making a killing on Amazon pretty much, but I think if more brands really protected their retailers, I think they would still do well. Like I do well enough to support myself, my family, 7 team members, and I have my own factory. Like, without being on Amazon, I don't think it's like a necessary part of the chain. And and it's not that I'm anti-Amazon. I'm pro indie stores, because I think that every community needs to have like, they're like the last truth tellers in commerce, because they have to look you in the eye to sell you something. And then they have to, if you don't like it, then usually you can return something. So like, there's so many ways to deceive people online right now, that I love the idea of someone being able to go into a store being like, hey, I heard dip is great. Was it what it says it is? And that person behind the counter can be like, yeah, I stock it because XYZ, and I think people are yearning for that kind of authenticity more than any kind of convenience.
Yeah.
I think most people are tired of whatever's going on.
No,
right
I think that that's a huge thing. And I mean, of course, every master marketer or whatever is going to really be advocating for big box or things like this, just for distribution's sake. Just how do we move more product, right?
Totally.
And there's arguments for that, and I think it's fine for plenty of products. But I think, like in your case, I really like the metaphor you used earlier of sort of the local record store, right? My local record store when I was a kid was Budget Tapes and Records, and I used to love that place. And any opportunity to go, I mean, I've explained this stuff to my kids a million times, because music's all digital now. They don't have like a relationship with their CD case and reading the leaf notes and trying to understand all the things that, like, I mean, you actually had, back to this notion of relationships, you had a relationship with that product. But like, and if you were a kid or a younger person, you walk in there, I have $20 to spend. I get one CD and there's a wall full of new releases. Like, how do I decide? So you talk to your guy at the, behind the counter, and you learn, what kind of music is it, because you didn't have the internet for all that stuff. Right. So it's so much, so the bond that I built over that, like, I remember when they finally closed, or they sort of evolved into like dubbing VHS tapes for people or something. And it was like, what are we doing? It was just like such a heartbreaker. Yeah. And so, but, I think that having those kinds of relationships is so important with your products and things like that. And like you mentioned, if you started competing by putting your product on Amazon and started actually eating the business of your small retailers, like, I mean, you just kind of turn into the dog eating its own tail, right? Like, it actually probably does you more harm to do that, depending on, I guess, what are your priorities.
It's so unspecial, the shopping experience on Amazon. I'm not anti-consumerist. I'm anti like hyper consumption, right? So like, that experience of shopping, I grew up with it, being social, being something that I did with my sister or my mom or my best friend. I love the idea of in-person shopping making a comeback. And okay, of course it's lofty, right? Like, it's lofty for me to be like, everyone, shop in person. Like, of course you can still buy on my website and stuff, but I don't think people realize the more they kind of take all of their hard-earned money and just give it to a few retailers, like say you buy everything on Amazon for convenience, like all of your salary goes to Amazon. It doesn't come back to you. There's like no method for it to come back to you. But if you're shopping in your neighborhood, at least like they're paying, that store or that business or restaurant, whatever, is like paying the taxes that make your neighborhood cool. Like, it's you want to keep your own money that you earn flowing in your own micro economy. It just makes more sense to me. But I don't think people think that way. Like, I studied economics and I think that way, but I don't expect everyone to consider that when they're shopping.
Yeah. But I do think we are moving or starting to move in a direction that's a little bit more of that. I think part of it is inflation driven, and the fact that the dollar has become worth less than it used to be. People, families especially, are having to make, more decisions based on what they can afford and what they can't afford. Yeah. And they're going to start doing some of these things, and they'll actually find out. I mean, of course, there are deals on Amazon, and don't get me wrong. I mean, I spend plenty of money there too. So I've crapped on all the big guys, but I definitely spend plenty of money there. So, and there are plenty of things that I'm good with buying on Amazon that just, it's not important to me, or I need it quick or whatever, or it's convenient or for whatever reason. Totally. But I definitely think that as people are having to be a little bit more discerning with their money,
Mm-hmm.
And, maybe there's, a portion of them too that are interested in sustainability or other things like that.
Right.
Maybe there's those social causes that they're interested in, but I think so much of it will just come down to economics. And I think that is going to lead to sort of a resurgence of this kind of relationship with retailers and stuff like that. And I think people are going to start trying to dodge some of that slickness that we were talking about, where you're going to the big heavy retailers that you're just, one more cog in the machine. Like,
Right.
I don't know, it feels good to interact with people. And the more that we spend time in our phones and all that thing, every now and then when we have to run something out and we get to meet somebody or have a good, visit with a retailer in some shop or whatever, like, I mean, the more those things are going to be good. I mean, like my wife, as an example, has been actually going the other direction, which is, and it's actually good for us. It's better for us, but we've been eating out a lot lately because our kids are in sports and we're all over the place. And, but our attitude is just that everything's become so expensive. The people are kind of terrible. Like nobody really wants, customer service is in a bad spot. The food's not that great. Like, everything is kind of slipping. So the experience of even doing that stuff has kind of lost its luster. And so now we're doing, I guess, the home-based version of going to your local retailer, which is we're just going to cook at home instead. And so, but as we also start doing different things, my wife goes to a lady for nails. She doesn't go to the fancy chain salon. She goes out to somebody's house and gets their nails done in someone's basement, and so it's like some of that kind of stuff where I think that the relationship driven factors are going to become more and more important. And I think that's where a product of yours will really start to shine. And so maybe let's talk about, just, I guess, some of the early growth of your company. Obviously, you talked about a couple of success stories that your retailers are having and some things like that, but we don't go from nothing to a lot, I mean, there's a journey here. So can we talk a little bit about just sort of your early days? I know one of the things, beyond just sort of your, personal drive to try and be sustainable and some of this other stuff, you didn't do some of the things that a lot of businesses are going right into. We already talked about the big box stores and things, but you're also not reliant on like influencers and things like that. It seems like the relationships that you're building are, and you used this word earlier too, which was they're a little bit more authentic. You are building real relationships with real customers and retailers. And that's transitioning or, becoming sales for your company, so the economics are working. But can you talk about, I guess, I mean, part of it is making conscious decision to do that, which is, hey, we're going to do this grassroots versus just throwing a bunch of money at, marketing plan or something and do a big media buy or something and blitz the Super Bowl or something. And so, so there's a different approach here that you're taking all together. And I think it could be really inspirational for people who are like, they don't know where to go, or maybe they're starting with no money and they don't know how to get moving without buying ads, for example.
Yeah. So I'm contrarian myself. I have issues with authority myself. I think my mom was also a rebel. So I don't know whether, I don't know what it is, whether it's birth order or whatever it is that makes me like not want to follow the rules. But I'd been in beauty for 20 years. I'd seen kind of, how the sausage is made with influencers, with, deceptive marketing, with the playbook that you kind of see all over the place. And, a little bit of arrogance peppered in with the audacity and then that other piece of me that likes to solve puzzles. I wanted to know if I could make a genuine word of mouth brand. That is what I set out to do on my own. And I was like, I can use all of the things that I hate about beauty marketing, like only using young model. Now it's changed over time, right? But like only using one kind of look and deciding like, that gray hair is just as important as, bubbly blonde young hair, like I took everything that I found, I don't know, kind of irritating about beauty marketing, and I just turned it on its head. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to use influencers. How do I turn that into my marketing story? It was like, I just, broadcast, hey, there's no fake hype here. If there's an affiliate or an ambassador of dip, they have to purchase dip first to be even considered to be an ambassador. So it's not like I just give out free products to everyone and everyone's like, oh, dip is great. And then they move on to the next shampoo and they're like, this is also great. And then the next one, So I was very protective of who could talk about dip and, just the reality. Like I wanted everything to be so real because I knew people were going to crave reality at some point. Like it's only a matter of time before someone's like, okay, I've bought like 10 things that suck. Like I want something that someone's actually purchased, And so there was that piece of it. And then the other piece of it was, we launched at the end of 2021. It was, we're still in COVID at that time, but it's like the rules were starting to like lift. And I saw everyone was approaching everyone else digitally. And I thought, what if I just, went analog? So I called stores. I walked into stores. I basically, took a page from Sarah Blakely's playbook, from the CEO of Spanx. And she like just went around the place and showed people like, this is what I made and this is why it's great. So I just did that at refill stores all over the country. And that's how I started. And within 18 months, we were a 7-figure business.
Yeah. Well, and it's so funny too, because it's so commonplace. Like that was the way business was done prior to 2020. Yeah. And so it is very interesting how big of shift it was, and I mean, there's a lot of ways that this has been maybe positive or negative. Right. I know like it's really affected our school age kids and stuff like that, where this big move to digital. I spent a lot of time during that period of time, because I've always kind of worked remote in one capacity or another. I spent a lot of time then teaching companies how to work remote and how to manage people's feelings and make sure that, people weren't feeling isolated and alone and all these kinds of things, but it's like, but now looking at it and seeing some of the damage it's done, it's funny how it's actually novel just to do something in person or to reach out to somebody by phone. I love going to these network events and meeting people, but there's so many people that just want to armchair network, for example, through LinkedIn or whatever, that have really no real incentive. But like I could get more done in 5 minutes with somebody just talking than, spending 6 months with them on LinkedIn going back and forth. Totally. It's so it's so funny and it's just insane that it's actually a little counterintuitive now, because it's just the way that we were. And there's a whole generation of young people coming up right now that, their whole mode of communication is online. My youngest son is 14 and, so he's deep into the social media and all that kind of stuff. But the one thing he does that's, considered insane by his friends is he calls his friends all the time. And so like when he's, they'll get online and they'll play Fortnite or Call of Duty or whatever, and they'll be on PlayStation and they'll be playing with each other on the network, but he will call them instead of using the in-game chat or whatever. He'll just put them on FaceTime and he'll just sit and FaceTime with his friends the whole time. I think they think it's bizarre, but for him, this is how he likes to communicate. He's a huge like relationship guy, even if he doesn't think about it that way. Yeah. And, but it's funny because it's my older son is not that way. He would rather be left alone most of the time. And so, digital has been great for him because he can reach out and talk to people and do what he wants that way. And so I think that there's it's such an interesting thing, but it's like you hear people say stuff that we've all heard and all thought was stupid, which is like getting back to the basics. But I think that the basics are actually kind of where it's at. And so, for like
10,000 years, human commerce was face to face. Right. It's only very recently in human history that digital commerce has been around. But for so long, there was like a code between buyer and seller. And I feel like that code has been lifted a little bit with the internet. Like there's less accountability from either side. Right. I think buyers are allowed to be more terrible. And so are sellers, just because of the nature of just digital commerce and the holes that are left in between the relationship. And so it's a little bit of like a love letter to the way I grew up in like the late 80s, early 90s, where I loved the experience of shopping face to face. And I think that accountability is really important between buyer and seller. I think I could stop 100 people on the street and 100% of them would have a story of how they bought something that didn't measure up to their expectations and they had a hard time returning it, Yeah. And I think that is what is happening with digital commerce a lot. Like you can oversell and underdeliver very easily. And then you throw people into like an AI customer service hell loop and you try and fatigue out the customer. And so for Dip, another thing that we do is we have an actual human being. Janet is our customer service person and she's amazing. And everyone is treated like a human being instead of, just served AI.
Yeah.
How can I help you stuff?
Yeah, no, it's incredible. I think it's a very cool thing. We may have already kind of covered some of these ideas, but what are some scrappy things that you did that, maybe wouldn't scale? And this goes back to maybe some of these, hands-on or analog marketing approaches, but things that wouldn't scale, but did actually work. So, I think we we hear a lot in startup culture, especially, this notion of scaling. And it's like, how many voices can we hear? How many people can we hear? And being
Yeah.
okay with only 2% of people even hearing our message or even giving a crap. And, there's all this stuff about like a bigger microphone. But what are the things that you did early on, or even maybe still do, that, even though it didn't scale to your contrarian point of view, it was still effective?
One of the things I did was I started hosting small groups of retailers in little summits for dip. We call them dip trips. And so we did one. I took our top 10 stores to the Dominican Republic. It was just the few of us talking about, none of them had met each other. They've all met each other digitally because the refill stores are networked, but they never really met each other in person. So we all got together and we had this thing in common. And, we had a great time. It was just a couple of days in the Dominican Republic together. I took a few stores to Morocco for 2 weeks. And when you think about big marketing campaigns, these are way, way smaller price tags for me to do these very intimate gatherings. And they ended up, my relationship with these people, I have real memories with these people, instead of this kind of like, I sell you shampoo and you sell it to customers kind of thing. So, we did this Catskills. I did hosted a big summer camp in the Catskills, and I had one of my most fun childhood friends out there. We did trivia with super soakers. We did a big boat contest. Everyone had to build their own boat out of cardboard, real human fun things. And on as far as marketing budgets goes, they were small for marketing budgets, but big impact for me. And they're big impact for everyone, because then they go back to their stores, which are all over the country, and they're like, let me tell you about dip and what we did. And it was it's really fun. And even the riskiest thing I just did recently was I brought on 2 of my competitors. I adore the founder of High Bar, which is a major competitor of mine, and Plain Products. And I was like, hey, I do these trips. Do you want to, we sell in all the same stores. Let's get together with 30 of our retailers. We went to Nashville and let's talk about how our 3 brands, how we are actually friends behind the scenes in sustainability, and how the 3 brands coexist and serve different types of customers that might walk into your doors. And that was a really, really fun, profitable thing for us. That, again, has a tremendous ripple effect in both reputation and just you can't buy that kind of relationship with someone.
Yeah, no, I love that. And it's one of these things, you've probably heard or people talk about, the butterfly effect, right? Like a butterfly flaps its wings somewhere and then that's making tsunami waves in Japan or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But I mean, kind of what you're describing here, and you even use the word ripple, this notion of what happens. And, when you connect with people on that kind of level, to your point, they go back to work and then they tell everybody at work. And then when those companies or those individuals move to other companies, they take that message with them. And then these ripples start to collide. And that's kind of where the real magic starts to happen, I think. And it's kind of what you were describing, where you're actually working with competitors to go out and do this because it's all for the greater good. It's not about business or being cutthroat. Instead, it's more about being authentic and showing up.
And being an entrepreneur is lonely. And so being an entrepreneur in sustainability is even lonelier. So people don't realize we're networked with each other because it is a lonely road to be like, hey, buy less, buy better stuff. And hopefully you understand that the plastic part is just we just all want you to ditch the plastic in the long run. We all have the same goals.
Yeah. I love that. Well, and it's I was meeting with somebody the other day, trying to pitch somebody to work with us the other day. And they asked us they said, well, who are your competitors? Right. Mm-hmm. And I didn't have a good answer for them because basically I said, I don't look at anybody as a competitor. I feel like there's enough work out here for all of us. So it's so you can work with me or you can work with somebody else, but I'm not competing with them. Either choose me or don't, but I don't even see them that way, So it sounds like in your case, obviously these people are competitive in terms of, maybe shelf space or you sell similar products, things like that. But the fact that you were able to kind of pull it all together for the greater good, I think just goes back to that sustainability messaging, sort of that being at your core and all that stuff, and it's just one more layer of authenticity that gets carried through the whole process. And I think that that's where so many of these companies fall apart, is that they don't actually have that level of connection to their product or their customer or their, you know, their business in general. You know, most of these companies, especially the big box stores and things like that, are just selling products. And it's just who will give us the best margin, who will give us the best whatever, whose product is most popular and gonna, you know, like, because if I'm gonna give up some of my shelf space at Target, you know, then I have to have some, you know, guarantees in place. I got to know that I'm actually going to use that space wisely. Totally. Otherwise, it's got to go to some company that'll do better. And so just the relationship is so different.
I do not envy being a buyer at Target. I think that is very difficult.
Oh, it's got to be the worst. Well, because even as an individual, you know, well, because you've got your own values, and then you've got to balance the values of just, you know, box stores trying to be profitable. You've got whatever, you know, I'm sure big company like that, you know, they've probably got some different social incentives that they're trying to work for, or, you know, maybe they have causes that they love and they want to try and build that into their types of products they sell and stuff like that. So there's just so many, I don't know, so many kings to please. It's like, I couldn't imagine doing that for work.
I think that's a really tough job. And I also think just, you know, the sway of public opinion in and out of Target is something it's probably very difficult for a buyer to navigate.
Well, especially when you're doing your buying 6 months, a year, 2 years in advance. And then it's like, oh crap, now that's not cool anymore, you know, or whatever it is.
I know.
So yeah, it's such I couldn't imagine. One thing I wanted to talk about with you too is sort of, you mentioned that you guys were basically 7 figures in about 18 months. What do you think about, or how do you think about sort of growth speed versus staying aligned? And obviously, I mean, just from this conversation, I can tell that you're wildly aligned with your values. So I'm sure that this is, you know, pretty predictable response, I suppose. But, you know, how did you factor in, you know, yes, I am really, this is my thing, but yes, we do need to grow too.
Well, growth was not, I think it's because growth was a byproduct. It wasn't the goal. So I think if you know what your actual goal is. My goal was to support as many refill stores, independent salons, and surf shops as possible. You know, that was my goal. And the little bit of the selfish goal was like, can I do this without running any ads? And can I do this without paying Zuckerberg $1 or anything? Like I had these other like little internal goals that were selfish. But like, you know, I wanted to know if I could create this company, like a real authentic company. It was a marketing thing I'd never seen done before. And I just wanted to know if I could do it. And now 4.5 years in, we're about to run ads for the very first time. But like that decision has come as like, I owe it to my team who's been working really, really hard, and it, you know, and the stores, like refill stores, surf shops, they're closing. You know, I can't save them all as one brand, right? But what I can do is try and scale the awareness of what we're doing, which I've never done before. So I'm going to scale the awareness and try and get people to understand to go buy these things in stores. So that is my next phase of growth, which is kind of exciting, you know? So that, I mean, I haven't started running ads yet, but that's my next thing. And it really is, I'm not trying to save the world, right? Like saving the world is like a very egotistical thing to say, but I am trying to save the refill community. And I have to do that by leading by example. So I have to show, like I've already shown in the past 5 years, like what a company can do and how they can do it and what the roadmap is to like build an authentic company. But now it's time to scale it up a little bit and make sure that this leading by example is effective for people that don't really know what we're about. Does that make sense?
And I think we're in an economy right now, or in a world right now where like people are ready for this kind of messaging too. So I think it's kind of hitting at the right time. I think we've all been, you know, like we were talking about COVID and stuff before. I think we've all gotten to a point where like we've kind of done what we were going to do with digital. And, you know, and don't get me wrong. I mean, AI is going to be crazy, and there's going to be there's other stuff too. But I think for a lot of humans, we're definitely hitting a point of exhaustion on a lot of this stuff. And, you know, we're overwhelmed and inundated. And I think that only gets worse with AI. And, you know, I think I've said this on the last 5 or 6 podcasts. So everybody, I'm sorry. But I keep using this metaphor. I come back to this vision of this notion of like a post-apocalyptic Tokyo. Every pane of glass, every whatever is a video screen, and there's just moving everything. And then you've got like this old dude slanging ramen like on the street corner from his little rickshaw or whatever. And that thing stands out so much in that field full of just crazy. And that's kind of how I think things are going to go with AI. I think you're going to get to a
so,
world where marketing is so inauthentic because it's literally being written by robots, and it's already begun. That stuff is starting to get everywhere.
Yeah.
It'll get better and it might become more convincing or whatever. But at the end of the day, it's still going to just be more. It enables people to make more stuff for less money. So they're just being noisy. And I think in a world that's super noisy, there's opportunities for companies like yours. And so I love that you're putting out a sort of a roadmap or an idea, or even just, I don't know, kind of affirming people who might be interested in having a product that's a little bit more in line with what you're doing, which is, maybe not necessarily even in your vertical, but saying that, this is a thing I'm passionate about and I love this. And there's room for me to build a business on this thing that I love without having to sell out or give of myself or whatever. I can stay true to what I'm trying to do. And that my goals don't have to be aligned with the goals of private equity or some of these guys that are just throwing money at companies. Because I think, at least for a little while, and I've seen it really up close and personal here in Utah because we've got such a thriving startup community. There's like these steps that everybody must take, and you're not successful if you don't. So if you don't do a big fundraise, then I guess you're not successful. If you're not a big unicorn or you don't have a giant exit or whatever, then it sort of is like almost putting everyone else down if you don't figure that part out, and it's created this bar that's so unachievable for a lot of startups. Not every startup is going to go through like a Series A or Series B, they just, not every company does that. But I think what's really cool about your story is that you're showing that it's not necessary either. And that, there is a unique path for just about every business out there, and anybody can do whatever it is they want to do. And, with, passion, interest, hard work, all the tropes, you can accomplish whatever you want to do. And there's actually a place for you to do it while staying true to yourself. You don't have to try and pretend to be something else. And I think that's something that's really inspirational about your story in particular.
Thanks. I never anticipated success. You just don't know if it's going to come or not. Like it just is not something that you want to bank on yourself, right? You want to start a business and bank on yourself. You just don't know what's going to happen. And, for me anyway, like there's so many twists and turns that got me to where I am now. So I don't want anyone listening to think that it was easy. Like at one point, my contract manufacturer went bankrupt and I was like, I don't know if I'm going to have a company tomorrow. And it was like in that crossroads, that's how I became a US manufacturer. Now I have my own facility that has doubled in size over the years. And so these are things that, like, if any entrepreneurship or any entrepreneur is like listening, it's just, there's going to be a lot of twists and turns and it's going to be crazy. And like the best thing you can do is think about a lot of things as noise. I think a lot of the advice I got in the beginning has absolutely turned out to be noise and has absolutely turned out to be exactly the opposite of my path. And that I think is what makes Dip special. And like, for anyone else out there that is wondering whether they need to kind of sell out or fundraise or any of those things, like build the thing you want first, and then kind of it will open the options for you later.
Yeah, I love that. And I think if people really play that through, like if they just think about life in general and stuff like that, like, we all know, whatever, you get old and you die or whatever, but but everybody's path is so different. Right. And we're all pursuing different things and we all have different interests and all that stuff. But I think there's this expectation in business that there's sort of a roadmap, like you should be able to do A, B, and C, and now we're successful. And the reality is, and it's the one thing that I always point to in doing this podcast, for example, we've been doing this for 9 years. You're going to be our 462nd interview.
Whoa.
And so in talking to that many founders, business leaders, CEOs, we've heard everybody from every walk of life up to and including like literal rock stars. And at the core, what there is this sort of, freedom to actually work within a process that you create. There is no roadmap. And I think as soon as people can give themselves permission to start looking for a roadmap, they can learn from, maybe they'll grab a piece from you that is, hey, it's okay for me to be authentic about the thing I care about. I don't need to fake it just to try and get more ears or whatever. And you see so many people doing this on social media where they're just trying to put out an act or something. But people smell that stuff. They know what it is. And so I think it's really, I don't know. I think it's encouraging to hear from people like you, but I think it's also good to just kind of reinforce that notion that it's never a straight line, and that's okay. And so, and the adversity and the problems and the hurdles and the things that you jump over, that's all just part of the process.
Totally. You're never it's never smooth sailing, like for long. Right?
Yeah. I love that.
Some
Well,
smooth seas, right?
yeah, I just kind of wanted to leave you with one last thing, which was I wanted to talk to you, and you kind of already alluded to this a little bit, but like, what do you hope to accomplish? Like, as you're moving around and you're doing this podcasting and you're starting to guest and you're going out there and obviously you're introducing people to your brand and your philosophy a little bit, but like, is there anything in particular that you would want to leave behind or might be the thing that you might, leave for the entrepreneur, the founder? And, and we talked a little bit before the show, I mean, just being a female founder in a sort of male dominant world, maybe not beauty specifically, but in a sort of entrepreneurial sense, it tends to be a little bit more male driven. Anything in particular for either young women or maybe that men should be more aware of, or, just things that you've encountered that it's like, man, it'd be easier if everybody just went along with this.
So I, as a younger woman in business, like I studied economics and math, and I tried to study the hardest things that I could in order to be able to kind of, exercise my brain. And I didn't love math, but I knew it was really hard and I wanted to challenge myself. And I kind of navigate my life in trying to do really hard things. And I want to say to a lot of women out there, like now I'm in my 40s now, and it's only now that people start to like take me seriously. Like for most of my life, I, even though I think I've had pretty good business acumen and all these things, like, do not listen to the people that don't take you seriously. You are probably like very, very smart and articulate and all of these things. And like, if people can't see that about you, do not let it discourage you, because you can prove anyone wrong. It's very easy to prove someone wrong and let like someone underestimating you actually be your best asset.
Yeah, I love that. Well, Kate, we're getting to the end of the hour. Do you want to just give people a quick where they can track you down, how they can reach out to you or connect if they're interested, how they can find your product either online, not at Amazon, or in person where they might be located someplace?
Yes. If you want to find me, I'm Kate Assaraf on LinkedIn. And if you want to find Dip, it's dipalready.com or at dipalready on Instagram or at dipalready on TikTok. I'm always in the DMs of Instagram. That's where people want to ask all the questions. So, and if you go on dipalready.com and you're curious, you don't want to listen to me and talk about my products, you can go on the store locator and it'll pull up the store closest to you. And you can go and walk in store and check it out for yourself.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kate. This has been sweet. I really appreciate the conversation. Lots of cool stuff in there. And I'm really excited for the future of you and Dip and everything. And so kudos for that. But thanks for coming on the show. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Ryan.
Absolutely. Thanks so much to Kate and to everybody who listens to the show this week and every week. And we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.